Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Ireland once again, and we're going to revisit one of the first Irish craft breweries that I ever encountered. And this is a collaboration beer that they've done with an American brewery from Chicago that I've never come across before. So looking forward to this one, it's supposed to be pretty good. So for this review we are going to head to Galway, which is kind of down towards the southwest of Ireland, and we're doing another visit to Galway Bay Brewery. This must be the second or third review that I've done from these guys, but this is a collaboration beer with Begyle Brewing Company, who are from North Centre in Chicago, and I was there just back in May actually seeing Half Acre along with my friend Jesse, so it was quite cool to learn that these guys were from that area. But this particular beer is called the Goodbye Blue Monday. It's an oatmeal IPA coming in at 6.6%, and by all accounts this beer's been around for a few years. I think this one, going by what it says on the can, this beer was first brewed together back in 2013. So if they've got an oatmeal IPA back then, it's kind of funny to go back and think, because obviously we've got these New England IPAs these days that are using oats and all of these kind of things. I have had one or two oatmeal IPAs before, and they always turn out to be pretty nice actually, so I'm very curious to see what these breweries can throw up with this one. So yeah, interested to see how this one turns out. Chicago, as we know, is a big beer city in America these days, by all accounts the American brewing capital, and we're starting to see a lot of Irish beers appear here over in Scotland too, and I've even seen a few of them appearing back home in Scandinavia too when I've been in Copenhagen. So exciting times for Irish craft beer. For a long time you just could not find them for love nor money, but a lot of the appearance of them in Scotland is due to Paul Rogers, who very kindly gave me this beer here to review on the channel. He's running an import company of Irish goods into Scotland, so yeah, thank you to him for making this review possible. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Galway Bay Brewery before. No doubt I'll add some more to that in the near future. There's a link there as well to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Begyle Brewing Company. Very first time I'm reviewing one of their beers, as I said. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there both for the Irish beers that I've reviewed for you from North and Republic. Both of those go in there, and there's another list for the American beers that I've reviewed for you as well. Both are being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, let's tell you a little bit about the breweries then. We'll start off with Galway Bay Brewery, since in this case I believe they are the home brewery. So in Galway Bay Brewery, it was founded by Neil Walsh and Jason O'Connell, both of whom had backgrounds in hospitality, but they'd originally planned to open up a chain of pizza delivery places, but this just didn't work out for them. So they relocated to the Oslo in Salt Hill in Galway, and they started serving gourmet burgers and stocking craft beer. But they had a big hall at the back of the premises, and so in 2009 they decided to start brewing their own beers on a small scale for the pub. But they only had 2 pubs and a restaurant initially, and they started the brewery just when the financial crisis hit, and they found that a lot of landlords were offering them more favourable terms to take in their beers and also to take over the management of their bars. So they started them off on actually creating their own pub chain, if you like, and selling their own beers, and then they found a brewery premises on the Ballyrit Industrial Estate, and they hired Chris Traynor to be their head brewer, and he was later replaced by the American Will Avery. But in August of 2019, Neil Walsh sold his shares in the brewery to leave the company, and this left Jason as basically the big boss. But they've scaled up over the last couple of years. One of the kind of bigger volume Irish craft breweries, from what I understand. They've now got 12 pubs nationwide throughout Ireland, and as of September 2019, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced over 100 different types of beer. Like I said, these guys were one of the first Irish breweries that I encountered. I couldn't find an exact date that these guys started. I think it might have been back around 2008, 2009ish. But yeah, I don't know when the business originally started, but they started brewing their beers back in 2009, so they're just kind of coming to their 10th anniversary, if you like. But one of the better known Irish craft breweries these days, and some of their beers are very, very interesting. Quite a prolific brewery as well, actually, from what I understand. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about the Galway Bay Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and of course, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. That'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you're interested in the different beers, you can check the website, or you can use Untappd and Rate Beer to have a look at the different lists. But anyway, on to the second part of our brewery notes then, on to the American side of things then. So Begyle Brewing Company are based in Ravenswood in the north centre area of Chicago, and they were founded back in 2011. But the brewery was founded by Kevin Carey, Matt Ritchie and Brendan Bloom, and they began brewing officially in 2012. So Kevin and Brendan come from a background in accounting, while Matt comes from a software engineering background, and he was the original head brewer. But Brendan's also involved in a cannabis wholesale company as well. I think he's a director in that, so I think he splits his time between the two ventures. But these three guys were flatmates after finishing university, and they basically got bored of their jobs in business, and so decided that they wanted to found a brewery together. But Matt and Kevin have roots in Michigan. They're from very close to Flint, which was where the water crisis was, if I remember correctly. But they were introduced to craft beer with breweries like Bell's and Founders and the really big famous Michigan breweries, while Brendan, on the other hand, is originally from Chicago, and he witnessed the beer boom in the city from the early days. You had things like Goose Island and a few other things kind of kicking it off. But they'd all dabbled in home brewing. They put together a business plan for the brewery, and then they secured their location in Ravenswood, which is apparently really good because it's an industrial strip, if you like, but it's very close to residential areas, so they catch a lot of people coming into their place after they've finished their work. But in 2014 they produced 1,000 barrels of beer, and they expanded the capacity over the following years. They produced 2,500 barrels in 2015, and they also opened their tap room that year as well. As of September 2019 though, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 200 different types of beer, and just looking through the Untappd and Rate Beer list will show you that these are a real variety of different styles. The name Begyle has a little bit of an interesting story as well, apparently. So originally they intended to call the brewery Argyle because Kevin liked Argyle socks, and the name was suggested by his girlfriend, and it worked well because Brendan had grown up on Argyle Street in Chicago. Ironically, Argyle Street is one of the big streets in Glasgow here in Scotland. But it turned out though that a winery had already used this name and trademarked it, and that trademark extended to spirits and to beers as well. So they say that they have a little saying, if you can't Argyle, beguile. So they liked this because they felt it was a little bit Shakespearean, the kind of hipster thing. Everyone's into Shakespeare, whereas I hated it at school. But it also, the word means to deceive as well, so they quite liked that little sort of edge on it there. But yeah, so an interesting brewery, another one of the numerous breweries that you'll find in the Chicago area these days, and I guess the next time I go back, maybe I'll have to pay them a visit and see what they're doing. But they seem to be quite well respected. They've got a lot of different beers there, 200. I'm not sure, for a brewery that's been in existence around, 7 years now, 7-8 years. I'm not sure how that compares to others in the Chicago area that have been going the same length of time, but 200 different beers in 8 years is fairly impressive for a brewery that's not gypsy brewing like Mikkeller and stuff like this too. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Begyle Brewing just now. There was a hell of a lot of information available in this brewery, so I've tried to condense it down as much as I could. But if you want to learn more about them, again, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check out the different beer lists on Untappd and Rate Beer as well. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself, then we can get rid of the brewery notes there. So it says on the back of this beer, Goodbye Blue Monday was first brewed back in 2013 in collaboration with our good friends Begyle Brewing Company from Chicago. This oatmeal IPA is brewed with Irish pale malt and lashings of Irish oats, hopped continuously in the kettle with Citra and Columbus, then dry hopped several times with more Citra. I believe the hop bill on this one incidentally has changed, because the thing on, I think it was Untappd, was saying there was mosaic in this at one point, so I think they have changed the recipe a little bit, unless that little statement on there was wrong. But it says it's been brewed in Ireland and Chicago numerous times since 2013, and it's remained a fan favourite on both sides of the Atlantic ever since. Drink it fresh. So yeah, it's quite nicely presented, this one. It tells you a little bit about the alcohol and stuff on the side. I do like the Galway Bay Brewing symbol. It almost reminds you a little bit of some of the communist artwork or something like that, which is interesting. So maybe a few people in America might have a bit of canary at that. It does actually look a little bit communist almost. Yeah, there you can see Begyle Brewing Company symbol as well, and there is the overall artwork on the can there. I'm not sure if the Irish cans would make it to America, or if it would just simply be the Begyle version that would be distributed there, but I can imagine with the star and just the symbol in that, people might mistake that in America, but who knows. Just something I thought it just came into my head when we were filming this review, so I apologise to Galway Bay Brewery for describing their symbol as communist, but yeah, just reminded me of that. But this is a 440ml can. The American pint, of course, is 473ml, so there will be a little bit of difference there. As I've complained about many times, I really don't know why these kind of tall boy cans are kind of taken hold in Europe. I know it's for sales and volume and all of this kind of thing, but I don't know why they insist on why they use these instead of the 330s. Granted, it gives you a bit more beer, but if you're going to give more beer, why not just do the half-litre? So yeah, not sure about that, but as you say, it's just a kind of, probably as a price marketing thing, we all know that. I just like to complain because the American measurement system doesn't make sense, and it's quite close to the American pint, but that's just me being moany, and yeah. So yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely bright yellowy golden colour, this one. There is a little bit of haze to this, but by no means is it the haziest IPA that you're going to come across. It's not a New England, came out kind of well before the New Englands. I think it's 2015 or so we started, in Sweden at least, we started getting the GBG Beer Week. I'm not sure when they started actually appearing in New England themselves, but a lovely little bit of haze to this beer. There's a solid, I would say, half, 2/3 finger of a frothy, perfect white head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, quite a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall not overly surprising in terms of its appearance when you consider that it's an IPA, and Oatmeal, of course, is pretty light in colour, so this kind of colour is to be expected. If I put my fingers behind the glass, there you can see the level of haze that this beer has. Not the haziest you're going to come across, but definitely has a good little bit of that in there. Overall, looks pretty nice, nothing overly surprising about it. So let's look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. Yeah, so this one actually comes across really nicely. You can definitely smell that oatmeal-y quality in the malt base there, and it really, it's nowhere near as smooth as you're going to get from, you know, like the New England IPAs and stuff like that. It is a little bit distinctively more thicker and doughy. It almost has a little teensy bit of kind of spicy quality to it as well, but it's very minimal. By no means is it like peppery or anything like that. It's just a very kind of minimal thing in there. So yeah, you've got this lovely white bready, but also slightly brown bready mix of things going on, forming the backbone of this beer. I really like the way the malts come across in this one. I have to say, big thumbs up to them on that. And it would make sense, actually. I think the American grains are a little bit kind of smoother and almost sweeter than the Irish grains. I don't know if they'll be Begyle will be importing Irish grains over to the States, if it's just a kind of shared recipe, or if they're very strict on using the same ingredients all the time. I suspect that would be quite expensive, to be honest. But the way the malt base comes across in this one really is quite nice. There's a little bit of a slightly woody undertone to it, but that's quite minimal again, and there's a nice sort of biscuity sweetness too. It's a little bit like McVitie's digestives. I don't know how good a descriptor that is for you if you're watching this review in America, but it really reminds me of this kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit, or cookies as they would be called in the States. But yeah, this is it really has a nice malt base to it, this one. It's very attractive in that sense. Lovely and smooth. You can definitely pick up a little bit of a kind of creamy quality in it from the oats too. I think it did say they had put oats in this one. Yeah, lashings of Irish oats, but it does have oatmeal, and the oatmeal is what's given it that kind of thicker, bready kind of quality. But lovely malt base in that, and you know, it is quite cool to see that a good few Irish breweries are using Irish malts, because it makes their beers a little bit different from the other things that you can get. And of course, Scotland and Ireland, we were very good at producing malts because of our whiskies. But yeah, lovely malt base in this one. On the hoppy side of things then, there's a little bit of a there is a little teensy bit of an almost noble hoppy type earthiness to the beer. Not really much in the way of a floral character. You can pick out a little bit of it, but the green side of the hops for me really leans towards the grassy end of the spectrum, which is quite nice. The fruity side of this beer is also really interesting as well. So they're saying that they're using Columbus in this one, and that's a very interesting hop because usually you would use that as a bittering hop. It's very, very spicy, and it can almost come across as being a little bit like aniseedy or and quite spicy in its bitterness. I would always use Columbus as a bittering hop and then use the other hops kind of on top of that. But you don't really notice too much in the way of a floral spiciness to this beer, but I'll be guessing we'll get a lot of it in the flavour. But the Citra comes out beautifully in this. You've got a lot of mangoey flavours. This one comes across as being a little bit like apricot-y or something like that. And I think the oats are kind of giving you this almost lactosey, milkshakey quality to the beer as well. This one does smell a little bit sort of lactosey. It reminds me of some of the ale farm beers that we get in Køge in Denmark. So yeah, it really has that slightly milkshakey quality to it as well, but that's not overpowering the rest of the beer. But lovely mangoes, a little bit of apricot-y quality to it also, and you can pick up some of these sort of gooseberry, lychee type complexities that you'd come across from the Citra hop. But a really lovely, juicy and very smooth smelling IPA. This one really reminds me of a lot of the ale farm beers that I've reviewed from Denmark before. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and just see how we get on. This one is the Goodbye Blue Monday, a 6.6% oatmeal IPA from Galway Bay Brewery in Galway in the Republic of Ireland, and Begyle Brewing from North Centre, or Ravenswood North Centre in Chicago in Illinois in America. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Thank you again to Paul for giving me this beer. Yeah, that's really pretty nice actually. I mean, I can see, at this point, you have to talk about how this beer would have appeared at different times as well. I mean, if you drank this back in 2013, you'd probably think this was a really quite unusual beer, and you'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. Today, it comes across as being a little bit more sort of old school, if you like, within that New England IPA category. And it's weird to say that about New England IPAs because, they've only really been popular for about 4 years, something like that. So this one, though, is really nice. I like how this goes together, but I can imagine back in 2013, this was a beer that would come across as being, very unusual and very, very different. To me now, though, it's just a really nice, solid example of the style. So keep that in mind when you try this one. But that's very nicely done. Big thumbs up to both breweries on this one. I love the way that this beer, it starts off with a little bit of a bite, but then the further you go into the aftertaste, the centre of your palate with the malty qualities, it just kind of smooths out and sweetens up. I really like that about this one. So yeah, let's try and break this flavour down a little bit then. So, as I said in the beginning, you'll get a little bit of a bite to this beer, but then as your palate adjusts to it, it smooths out really nicely. You can feel that lovely sort of bready, oatmeal-y quality. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. The further you go into the aftertaste, you will feel it dry out a little bit, and some of the more grainy aspects push their way out. It almost smells as if you've got a kind of mixture, or tastes, not smells, it really tastes as if you've got a mixture of like white and brown bread in this one. I really like that base that the beer has. If you move a little bit more into the centre of your palate, you can feel the creamy oats just sort of sitting on top of that nice kind of bready layer, and in the very centre of your tongue you can pick out a little bit of a kind of biscuity or sort of cookie note in there as well. I want to say that there's not really a wheaty presence to this one, but if you move further forward on the palate, you'll notice that the further you go into the aftertaste, this beer, pardon me, it really starts to kind of sweeten out a little bit. You really start to get those almost lactosey, very slightly milkshakey flavours out of the beer, which is good. But yeah, even if you compare it to some of the New England IPAs of the day, this one is still a little bit unusual because of that kind of grainy, brown bready quality that it has. I mean, And it's not farmhousey like some of these New England IPAs, like Alchemist, Heady Topper, and I'm sure some of the early Hill Farmstead things and stuff like that. They weren't quite as sweet as this, but they did have a bit of that more grainy, herbally, vegetal quite type thing that you would get from the yeast. But you don't really get that here. I mean, this just would have been an absolutely very unusual beer to try at the time. And I know that the beer that springs to mind when I think about this would be Fata Morgana from Omnipollo. They just put oatmeal and oats in an IPA base, and it turned out really well for them. I think that was even before New England IPAs were widely known about in Europe. So yes, it's interesting to think about this one just based on how old the beer actually is, but it's a solid beer, even in today's standards with New England IPAs. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, it does start to get a little bit more floral and aromatic. You can pick out a little bit of that kind of trademark spicy note that you'll pick out from the Columbus. Then around the very front curve of the palate, it's just that little bit lighter and grassy. By no means though, even though it has that kind of distinctive spicy note from Columbus, it doesn't blow the head off you in terms of IBUs. It's just quite nice, and it's just quite nice and drinkable. This one, it's 6.6%. You know, it's just it's average strength for a New England IPA, or even any type of IPA, to be honest. It doesn't matter whether it's West Coast or whatever, and this technically isn't a New England IPA. But yeah, I really like how that goes together. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer, and it's all Citra in there. If you go to the very back of that oily bubble, you can pick out a little bit of these darker grapefruity, passion fruity kind of flavours that you can get from Citra. But as you come further forward, it really smooths out. You start to get those lovely kind of mango-y flavours, and that mixes well with the sort of oaty creaminess that you get out of this beer, the sweeter side of it, and that milkshakey type flavour that I was talking about. Those flavours really mix well together. But as you push further forward on the tongue, you do start to get the impression of a little bit of a kind of almost like yogurty apricot or something like that. It really reminds me of the little Munch Bunch yogurts that my mum gave me in my lunchbox when I was young. And then if you just go behind the front curve of the tongue, you get a little bit of that kind of those sort of lychee, gooseberry kind of complexities that you get out of Citra as well. But like I say, the way all of these flavours go together is really quite nice. The unusual thing about this beer, if we compare it to the New England IPAs that it's closer to, is that little bit of bready graininess that comes out in the flavour. But it's a beautiful beer, this one, so I'm glad that Paul gave me this one to review, because this is quite unusual in today's context. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I'd say that this beer, it's quite mid-bodied, definitely mid-bodied. It's maybe pushing the top of mid-bodied actually. Carbonation's very smooth. It's quite a big oily mouthfeel that comes out of this beer, to be honest with you. It really leans towards that oily side of the spectrum. At the same time, it does come across as quite clean. I've always talked about this with the Irish, Scottish, Norwegian, Icelandic beers. It really has this kind of clean mouthfeel to it, just because of the quality of the water that you'll get in these countries. That really affects the flavour of the beer, in my opinion, too. But it really has a very clean mouthfeel. It's big, clean, has a little bit of wetness to it, but quite an oily IPA, this one. In terms of the hoppy bitterness, I think we're talking maybe 40 IBUs with this one. You do get a little bit of the graininess, giving you some bitter qualities in the aftertaste. The hops will give you a little bit of it too. That sort of spiciness from Columbus will have a bit more of a pronounced effect. So I think about 40 IBUs in this one. Nice juicy fruity qualities in there, the mangoes, apricots, all of these kind of things, and it does have a good bit of sweetness to it as well, this beer. But overall, really nice, and I'm glad that I was able to try it for you. The malt base really has a good balance between smoothness, sweetness and graininess as well. There's three different things going on there. But yeah, let's just leave it at that for this one. A really interesting beer, this one. I can see it would have been very unusual at the time, but it still holds up very well in kind of today's context of the New England IPAs. So yeah, this one was the Goodbye Blue Monday at 6.6%, an oatmeal IPA from Galway Bay Brewery in Galway in Ireland, and Begyle Brewing from North Centre in Chicago in Illinois in America. An interesting beer, this one, and I'm glad I was able to review it for you. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Galway Bay and from Begyle. I'm sure I'll return to both of these breweries at some point in the fairly near future. But thank you again for watching. Make sure you check out my social media. Make sure you check out these breweries. And I will catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, slán just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Make sure you check out this one, Goodbye Blue Monday, from Galway Bay and Begyle Brewing. Slán, skull, cheers.